everybody. This is Nancy Sasaki, Executive Director at Alliance Healthcare Foundation. Thank you for joining us at this month at AHF. Don't forget that you can always follow us on Facebook, like us on Facebook, connect with us on Twitter. There's always our website and our email. Lots of ways to get in touch with us. So thank you. Today I have a special guest with me, Kristen Wolslegel, who produced this particular report, Causes Count. And thank you for joining us, Kristen.
Thank you for having me, Nancy. It's great to be here.
Great. I'm going to just kind of tee this off and just say, you know, I had an opportunity to participate. It was really a lot of fun. And I think one of the things that first jumped out at me with this particular report was that y'all think that nonprofits make a difference. What do you mean by that?
Sure. So Nancy, this is actually an economic impact report of California's nonprofit sector, and what we showed is that nonprofits make a difference, not both economically but socially. And we quantified this for the very first time. It's a big deal for California nonprofits because this has never been done before on a statewide level for the entire California nonprofit sector. So I'll walk you through.
Here in San Diego. But we don't talk about nonprofits like this. Nonprofits are the service providers. What do you mean by economic impact?
Sure. I mean, we often think of nonprofits as the different subsectors that work in, so like the arts, or education, or entertainment. And what we aim to do here was to show the tangible value that nonprofits provide California collectively, because when we start to think of ourselves as a single, unified group, we have more power to affect true social change. So what we did and what we found was that we worked with a team of economists, number crunchers, and nonprofit researchers at the University of San Diego. I think you may know some of them, Nancy. And we analyzed all of the 501c3 nonprofits in California. What we found was exceptionally impressive. We show that nonprofits contribute 15% to the state GDP. That's 1/6 of all the economic activity in the state. And on top of that, we also generate new money. So over $40 billion per year is brought into the state by nonprofits from out-of-state sources. So that's new economic activity. And what we've shown in Causes Count is that we're contributing to our local economies, and we're bringing more resources into our communities than were ever there before. So you were an advisor on this study, Nancy, and when you first saw this economic impact and these numbers, what did you think? Were you surprised?
I was surprised at the magnitude of the numbers. I think that everybody's known in some degree that nonprofits make a difference, and and they contribute to the economy. But it's great to have the actual numbers and facts in terms of what they do contribute to our local.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and another surprising finding was that Californians are the 4th largest employer in California. I'm sorry, that nonprofits are the 4th largest employer in California. Nonprofits create more jobs than construction, finance, agriculture, or insurance, and nearly 1 million Californian jobs is in a nonprofit. And one way we like to kind of explain this is if you think about all of the nonprofit workers in California, if they were a state, they would be the 45th largest state in the U.S. They'd be larger than Alaska and Delaware. So 1 in 16 Californians work in a nonprofit. And of interest to your constituents, Nancy, we show that healthcare is the sector's largest employer. So that's not just hospitals, but it's also community clinics, substance abuse facilities, nursing facilities, rehabilitative care. So that's a particular interest to your work at the foundation. Did you have any reflections on that particular finding?
I think that that's great news, because I do believe, again, that the nonprofits, and especially those in healthcare, are making a difference. And I think to give them more value besides just the services that they are providing and look at their role in the whole economy, I think really allows us to talk about this in a holistic way.
Exactly, and so we feel that, to get back to your question, these economic findings are very powerful. It sends the message to policymakers that we deserve a seat at the table. It lets government and business know that we need to be on their radar as they make decisions about California's future. Because as nonprofits and government work together more closely, we can bring more resources into our state and into our communities. And the implication is that once they see our job-creating metrics and our economic value and activity, cities will start to court nonprofits in the same way they court for-profit industries.
Well, you know, what I wish is that as nonprofits, we could, as a whole, kind of move that forward as a whole, instead of, you know, those in healthcare or those in arts or those in education, you know, that we could all come together and say, look at what we do for this economy, look at what we do for your community, and do that as a whole.
Exactly, and that's the idea. And one of the big themes of this report is this idea that we move from hidden in plain sight to a seat at the table. And
Yes.
what we mean by that is that nonprofits are generally not thought of as a single unified group. You know, we're thought of as the local hospital or my kid's soccer league or, you know, NPR, the university I went to. But the implications of causes count are that we are united in that we can use our power for the common good and work to advance a common agenda. And by having a seat at the table, what we mean is that California's leaders should work with nonprofits to implement community solutions and programs. For example, whenever the Chamber of Commerce, for instance, is asked by legislators or policymakers to bring a business perspective to the discussion, we want the nonprofit sector to be asked as well.
Well, you know, I think that maybe for another time we could have a conversation about how we move nonprofits to think that way, because it's one thing to have the data that says that we are this working force, you know, in our economy. It's another for the nonprofits to believe it and to work together. I think moving on in the report, I'd really like to hear, one of the things that always strikes my interest is when you start talking about disparities and that disparities matter. What were your findings in that area?
Sure. So amidst all of this good news, Nancy, we found that there's actually a lot of room for improvement in the nonprofit sector, particularly in the area of nonprofit resource distribution. So we all like to think of nonprofits as working to address and correct inequalities, right? But we found that many of the same inequalities that exist in larger society are actually reflected in the nonprofit sector itself. So specifically, nonprofits that do work in communities of color and low-income areas have far fewer financial resources than their counterparts in wealthier and less diverse areas. So for example, think of the San Francisco Bay Area. It has 20% of the state's population, but nearly half of all of the assets of the state's nonprofits. That's 50% of the state's nonprofit assets in an area with 20% of the population. So contrast that with the San Joaquin and Inland Empire regions. These comprise sweeping areas of Central and Southern California, also containing 20% of the state's population, but they have only 5% of the sector's assets. So what we're seeing are two areas with equivalent populations but drastically different amounts of nonprofit resources, to the tune of 10 times more in the Bay Area than Inland California.
See that a lot right here when we talk about San Diego and Imperial counties. And even though the numbers and the size, you know, San Diego County being up 3 million and Imperial County being 175,000, we do see that disparity as well in terms of the number of services and assets and resources that are taken to Imperial County versus trying to do that work in San Diego County. So, you know, definitely see that all over the state.
Yep, and actually there's a portion of the report that shows a north-south disparity and an urban-rural disparity. You know, furthermore, there's the question of California's unique demographics. So while immigrant and minority communities account for the majority of the state's population, we're a majority state, right? Causes Count found that there are only half as many nonprofits per capita that are located in communities of color as there are in less ethnically diverse areas. And nonprofits in these communities of color have less than half the assets per capita as do the nonprofits in less diverse places. So I don't think anyone was particularly surprised to hear that wealthier communities have wealthier nonprofits, but now we've got the data to prove this, and when you come face to face with the actual data, you say, wait a minute, you know, what's going on here? This is not what we stand for. We see this as a call to action to foundations and to other donors, to the state and federal contracting practices to keep the goal of equity and nonprofit resource distribution at the forefront, particularly as it relates to California's unique demographic landscape.
Well, you know, that's probably a conversation for yet another this month at AHF, and that is the systemic disparities. You know, when you think about the disparities that exist, especially in healthcare, and whether which doctor you go to or where you live and how that impacts your health. The systemic disparities, as you're kind of identifying there, that why do resources stay in the more wealthy areas versus, and why do they stay in different areas with regard to people of color? So, probably another discussion for another time. But
yeah, and it's an important one. Yep.
Very important one, and I think one that really deserves the conversation.
Yep.
So, and then in conclusion, you come to it's that the title of the report, that causes count. Where did y'all? What does that mean to you? And what do people do about that?
Sure. So what we wanted to do was, there's a portion of the report that's kind of by the numbers, where we basically counted nonprofits. Like I said before, we tend to think of us as our own separate little sectors in these disparate groups, and this idea that we're a unified force. So we did look at nonprofits by all the different subsectors, and we kind of sliced and diced it in terms of assets and revenues. But what we really wanted to show is that we are this unified single force, and so this idea, that nonprofits deserve a seat at the table, that we are a viable force to be reckoned with, and we should be involved in all policy decisions at the state. One of the several goals we have of this study is to share with the state legislature and work toward developing a nonprofit caucus. There are various caucuses in the state legislature on every little topic that you can imagine, but there's no nonprofit caucus, and there should be. And so that's the idea of sort of quantifying what we do.
Well, I think, that I was just having a conversation with somebody earlier that, we think about things in these little pieces, and how do we begin to talk about it as it's all rolled up into one and realize that sharing this advocacy effort for all nonprofits will state, not only locally as we're concerned about, but statewide as well.
Yeah. Yep, it relates to advocacy, and it's actually a nationwide trend. 23 other states have done this kind of report. It is a larger trend in the nonprofit sector nationwide, and I think it will make us more powerful policy advocates.
Well, I'm really looking forward to working with you guys and getting this information out there and continuing these conversations that are so critical that are pulled out of this report. Is there anything else you want us to know about the report?
You can go to our website to download a copy. There's a really great 2-minute video that just hits the key points really quickly. Share the video with your friends, colleagues, and family, and we just need everyone to work to get the word out.
That's awesome. Well, I'm sure all of our viewers will be on board with us.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Thanks again so much for joining us, Kristen. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Nancy.
Absolutely. So this is an interesting question that I've gotten on Twitter. Don't forget that you can tweet me any question that you want at AllianceHF. And this one says, we hear you hum the theme song to this month at AllianceHF. Are there any lyrics? Do you ever make up any? Well, since we're on camera, I can only hum them. I don't have any specific words, but if I had the music playing, I'm really good at making up words to songs. So maybe next time I will sing you the theme song for this month at AllianceHF. Thanks for the challenge. I also wanted to let you know that on Friday last week, I took the board of directors out to Imperial County so that they could see what's going on out there. I really thank our grantees for taking the time to share with them the challenges that they face, the issues that they have solved, and how they work so well collaboratively together out there. We also got this certificate of recognition from the City of El Centro for Alliance Healthcare Foundation and all the work that we've done out there. It's really gratifying, I think really good for the board to see that, because we've worked hard to get some funding out to Imperial County, to the organizations out there, and we've learned so much from them. So really appreciate that they did that for us. I also wanted to tell you about the Food Funders Network. The Food Funders is a group that's formed under the San Diego Grantmakers, and it's a group of 12 or more philanthropists, whether they're foundations or individuals, but they're all people that are very interested in the food system in our community in San Diego County. And, the last meeting, we actually heard from Kaiser Permanente and some of the things that they're doing that are all food related, with their Healthy Eating Active Living program, their New Roots Fresh Farms, They also work with the CHIP, which is the Community Health Improvement Partners, is one of our grantees. But they work with them on the Childhood Obesity Initiative and Thriving Schools. We also learned about each of the things that some of the other philanthropists are doing, like a food truck for seniors, smartphone app that's going to work with the school districts about food and nutrition, the New Roots Food Hub. So there's a lot going on out there, and we're really excited to be a part of that group, learning more about food systems, and especially since our Innovation Initiative grantee is the Solutions for Change Solutions Fund, and looking at how we can get social enterprise to be a key component of all of the efforts that we're doing. So more to come on that. As a result of all of that, I got invited, and several of the other philanthropists here in town got invited to this meeting on October the 1st called Food System 6. It's a cross-sector accelerator that will mentor new private ventures and novel ideas for nonprofit and government initiatives to improve the health and sustainability of our food system. So there's a lot of work going on locally as well as statewide to improve the food system and our distribution, how we grow it, how we distribute it, how we get it to the right people with the right food, and we need. So more to come on that particular meeting on October the 1st. And then, weather. Let's talk about the weather. You know, when I was first talking about this agenda, it was like brutally hot. And here in San Diego and Imperial County, it's really hard to complain about how hot it is. Not so much in Imperial. It gets really hot out there. But you know, when your friends around this country are like, it's a little difficult, but here we can all talk about that. So I wanted to talk about ways to stay cool, like drinking lots of water. Good for you. Also, fans. Fans are good things. And you know, all the stores run out of fans when it gets hot. How crazy is that? So get yours now when it starts to cool off. And I was really concerned about that because I play beach volleyball as well. And some of my friends this weekend were actually showing some signs of heat exhaustion, like a little bit of confusion, a little bit of kind of wobbliness, getting flushed in their cheeks. And you know, you really have to stop exercising. You need to cool your body temperature down, get water in your electrolytes. So hopefully, now that the temperatures have dropped, we're actually staying a little bit cooler. And then probably the last news that I have, that's the last news. Yes, mission support grants. They're coming out again. So we just had a meeting earlier today, and the launch date for opening up grant applications for mission support will be October the 6th. You're hearing it for the first time. I haven't even told the media people to get the message out yet. Starting on October the 6th, the deadline will be November the 16th, so you'll have a good 5 weeks to get the application done. It will be online on October the 6th. Don't look for it now. It's not there. But if you have any questions, please feel free to call me. You can always send me a message on Twitter, always through Facebook as well. But we'll be getting that information out and the links and the connections that you need. But we're really looking forward to getting your applications in starting October the 6th. That's it, you guys. Thanks so much. See you next month.